Ashley.
As long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Never gonna lose, never gonna win. As long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. There we go. We are live. It's a Monday lunchtime with Live and LinkedIn. So we're going to be having a chat to my lovely guest, and we'll also be finding out a little bit about what he does and what his question is for LinkedIn. So, Nathaniel, how the devil are you?
Very well, thanks, Ashley. How are you?
Yeah, well, it's a Monday. Why wouldn't I be awesome and brilliant?
Absolutely.
And enjoying life? Yeah, so absolutely superb. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Nathaniel. Where you're from? What do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Nathaniel. I run Business Protected, which is an insurance brokerage for the SME market, and we look after the individuals within companies.
No, absolutely superb. So basically, if I want to insure my shed, I come to you.
Almost.
Yeah.
I don't ever insure objects other than people. No, not that people are objects. Dreadful way of putting it. But what we do is we look after the risk that businesses often don't assess themselves. So, you know, what happens if a shareholder passes away and they need to buy shares back, or they need to make sure that they've, you know, got the right group policies in place so that people don't leave for other jobs and stuff like that.
Right. Okay. So nothing like I would get from my normal insurance, my car insurance, my house insurance with buildings and all of that. It's more of the people. And this is the stuff that small business owners don't think about, isn't it?
Yeah, quite often. I mean, there's been studies out there that say that, you know, it's close to 100% of SMEs don't have the right setup. You know, a few do, but it's very few and far between.
Close to 100%. That's shocking.
Yeah,
so here's a question for you. How many people create content on LinkedIn?
What, in that area, or
no, just you know, everybody. There's 1 billion people on LinkedIn. How many people create content on LinkedIn?
Awesome.
It's less than 5%. So
Right.
So basically, more people create content on LinkedIn than they do have the right insurance for their business.
It sounds about right. Yeah.
That is shocking. That is absolutely shocking. And so, what are we getting wrong?
I think it's the depth of advice, because there's a lot of people who've taken out, you know, their own personal insurance, but they haven't structured it through the company. And then the bigger businesses have brokers. You know, there's lots of brokers who look after the corporate world, but there's not as many of us in our sector that look after the SMEs. So there's quite a few who've got a bit of it, but they don't actually have what they need, and they haven't reviewed it in a long time. So, you know, some of those can become redundant, or, you know, they weren't structured correctly in the first place.
Right. Okay. So I started out my life in insurance. Started out my sales career in insurance. So I sold life assurance, endowments, protection. I also did a little bit of contents and buildings, and we also had a little policy that covered your shop. Everybody that you speak to probably got a bit of life insurance. They probably got some sort of mortgage protection, but that's about it then. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, in a lot of cases. So, you know, if we start on the life insurance side, a lot of people need it, right? You've got mortgage, you've got family, you need to make sure that you're protected. But if you do it through the business, it can be up to 50% cheaper, because you can basically structure it. You know, the analogy is like an ISA is for savings. You can put a life insurance plan in what's known as a relevant life plan, and it's just a tax wrapper that allows you to put it through your limited company. So that's the low hanging fruit. But there's a lot of other stuff that they haven't necessarily considered, like, you know, their reliance on their business for income. What do they do if they can't work anymore? They're going to probably keep needing to take it from the business, but that damages the business whilst they're not there. But it also means that that's going to run out at a point, because that business might not be there anymore. And then there's other things that are more about succession planning and continuity, like shareholder and key person policies. But I think there's a lot of different things that you would need to take out if you're a reasonably sized business, and you might not have taken it out already because at the time that you started up, it either was too expensive, or at that point it might not have even been relevant. It's through that business cycle that some of these become relevant and others become irrelevant.
Sure. Okay. Like having a CRM facility or a video channel and stuff like that as we develop our business. All these things come in. I'm just going to say hello to Mihal, who's listening today. Now, Mihal is in the accounting space. He's going to have an awful lot of look after an awful lot of business owners that probably don't have any insurance either. So if you've got any questions for Nathaniel, then please put them in the chat and then we will ask them live. And that's the beauty of joining us live. If you're listening on the podcast as it's a recording, then you're going to have to reach out. And we've got links to you in the podcast, Nathaniel, so that people can reach out to you there. Okay, so I've heard of key person insurance. When I did it years and years ago, it used to be called key man insurance. But
we're back for PC now.
it's come full circle. But that is the key person in the business. So if I'm running a board, there's 3 people on the board, and one of those goes, the business is going to collapse. So I need to have some sort of protection in place there. So that's the obvious one that I know. But what else are we missing? And have I explained that properly?
Yeah, I think so. I think key person's cover is all about making sure that if there is a financial risk because you lose someone, what does that look like first and foremost, and then how do you protect against it? So you're absolutely right. Not everyone within a business is going to be key. So that really takes care of the continuity planning. You can also cover debt. So if you see on you're an accountant, you see on their accounts that they've got a commercial mortgage or some asset finance and things like that, they might want to make sure that they're completely cleared if the worst happens. And the final one on that front is personal guarantee insurance. So a lot of business owners are quite reluctant to sign a personal guarantee when they're taking out debt for good reason, but quite often the lender just says, well, we're not lending it to you. So having personal guarantee insurance can ring fence the majority of their personal assets in the background. I think a big one is shareholder protection. So if there's multiple shareholders, let's say it's the 2 of us, we run a business and it's worth a couple of £1 million, and then I die, my shares go to my partner. How do you buy them back? Best case, she sits at home and takes the dividends that I would be, entitled to. But worst case, she could come into the business, try and change things, cause you a headache. She could try and sell her shares to someone else. So there's a lot of businesses out there that don't have a shareholder agreement. So that's, the legal side of things is really important to ring fence that. But at the same time, putting policies in place that are equivalent to the value of your shares, so that you can facilitate a share buyback, is really important. From the widow or the widower's side, it's really important because they've got fair value out from what they, that partner has grown within the company. But on the survivor's side, it's really important as well, because you don't have to worry about keeping on paying a dividend. You can just say, look, I'm really sorry if you lost, here's the money, I'll take the shares back, and you can both go your separate ways and hopefully both flourish into the future. So they're 2 real key areas, succession and continuity. There's 2 others. So making sure that the right group policies and private medical insurance and things like that are in place for business owners is crucial, because finding the right employee is hard enough.
Yeah.
But if you've got turnover, it's really difficult to sustain where your trajectory is. So making sure that you've got the right group policies that mean people are less likely to leave is really, really important. And then, as I mentioned a minute ago about the relevant life plan being a really tax efficient product for individuals, they can also do executive income protection, which is also considered an allowable expense. So saving corporation tax, provide your income, 80% of salary and dividends, pension contributions, all that sort of stuff. So it's quite wide. It's not just about the individuals in their own personal circumstances, but it's also about what happens to the business if, and then insert sort of miserable outcome that could possibly happen.
And this is the thing, right? That miserable thing that you said, it doesn't happen to us, does it? But I bet you've got a few stories.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten from our clients some who didn't end up being clients. So we had a chat with a guy a few years ago, and he had a stroke at 38, and he hadn't taken out critical illness cover. He would have been in a much more secure financial position if he had. And when I spoke to him, he just wanted to make sure that, he wanted to know what he could do about it. And ultimately, the best case scenario was he's going to have to go in for surgery, have a stent, and a year after that, that's when the insurers would look at his case, not necessarily give him cover. And the premium was going to be rated by, I think it was £5 per mil. So every £1,000 of cover, they were going to slap on an extra £5 per year, which just meant it was prohibitively expensive. So having the conversation before the event is so, you know, people don't like sales, right? Sales is dirty, but it's important to have that conversation, because if you have it afterwards, that's a really, really horrible conversation. Yeah, I think probably one of the most famous one in our industry is AMT coffee. If you've ever seen them, the coffee shops in a lot of train stations. But three brothers started that, grew it to 20 million turnover, 450 outlets. One of them died, left the shares to the wife. The others just completely ignored her, didn't pay her out dividends, didn't pay fair value. She ended up taking them to the High Court, and I think she was awarded 7 or 7.5 million, which they couldn't pay because they'd taken out a load of debt, doing up the house, flying on first class, all that sort of stuff. And ultimately, they had to sell the business to pay her fair value. And now none of the family were involved, to my knowledge. So it's not just that level of the financial; it's family as well. I don't imagine that they ever speak. It's just really horrible. So the conversation is difficult to have when you're an accountant or you're a broker of some other part of financial services. But not having that conversation and then having to have one much later down the line is much harder.
I'm glad you come on, because these are thoughts I've never had. I'm lucky I'm on my own, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But you sort of like think, you got these businesses. What happens if so and so dies, and where's the business going to be? Because like you said, that was a good business. It was doing well. Three brothers, they love each other, they all work well together. Nothing's going to happen to damage us. Well, hang on a minute, what if?
And they were only in their 40s when one of them was diagnosed with cancer. And I mean, going back to those sort of what happens, and the statistics of it. Legal and General did a study in 2021, and they said 70% of the business owners that they surveyed thought that they would be out of business within 2 years of losing a key person. That's a huge amount of businesses, because there's about just under 6 million SMEs in the country. So that's a huge proportion. Obviously, the big ones are less likely to. They've probably got structures in place, but the vast majority of SMEs are in that under 10 category, aren't they? So they're really susceptible to the loss of a key person.
Yeah, sure. Look, I was just doing an analogy because I do love analogies. Sadly, I don't know an awful lot about football, but whoever Ronaldo plays for, right? Yeah. I guess they've got him insured for quite a bit, because if he does his leg in and can't play for a season, they're not going to win the league. And so it's that analogy, isn't it? Who's more important, you or Ronaldo? And in your business, you are more important than Ronaldo.
Yeah, categorically, yeah. I mean, I don't know much about football either, so we're in the same.
Yeah, but you do know there's 11 people on a team.
100%. Yeah. Oh, I've got that much. Yeah, I think I've got the offside rule down. Yeah.
But if there's three of us running a business, like the coffee guys. Which one was Ronaldo? They were all Ronaldo, weren't they? But they didn't protect their golden goose, or whatever you call it.
Yeah, and they had years of benefiting from the income that they drew from the business, but they could still be benefiting from it now, and they're not. And that widow had 2 kids, so it was it wasn't just her. They felt she was a bit of a gold digger, but it was also their niece and nephew, I think. So it's just almost incomprehensible, really.
Yeah, but you also got to look at it from her point of view. She's just lost her husband, and
then she has all that to deal with. Yeah, awful.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing with insurance. We always moan about the premiums, and it's never going to happen to us. I had a very old camper van, and the first thing you do when you buy an old camper van is take out RAC insurance or equivalent. And we went to France in her, and had a lovely trip. But on the way home, the radiator died. Water all over the car park of the supermarket, because we stopped to get some wine, like you do. And we had to spend 2 days in a hotel while we waited for somebody to fix it all up and stuff like that. But because I had insurance with the RAC, then I didn't pay for the hotel. I didn't pay for all the works that the guy. I had to pay for the radiator, but I would have done anyway. I didn't pay for any repatriation. Absolutely brilliant. But you don't realize until you've actually experienced it, or know someone that's experienced it. And all the years that I sold life insurance and fire insurance and stuff like that, you don't see people dying. You don't see people having house fires, but it's just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got a personal reason for doing it. My dad passed away at 58, and in the last 3 years, he had a bleed on the brain. Then he had a form of cancer. Then he had a year where he was just in recovering, and then he had another form of cancer, which took him. So you see those sorts of things happen where 58 is too young. I
Mm.
mean, there's a lot of people pass away much younger than that, unfortunately. But when you see it firsthand, he had a business, and it just he couldn't deal with it anymore after the start. So we do see it. It's not that frequent, but the impact to your family and to the business. A lot of businesses. We're dealing with a private medical scheme this morning, and the guy who owns it, I think it's his uncle's in there, his two daughters work in the business. If that business goes down, it's not just his income and his financial situation; it's loads of people that he is incredibly invested in.
Yeah, but it's the whole family, isn't it? It's not
Absolutely.
some businesses it's Johnny and Sally and they're all independent,
Yeah.
but this is one big family. And like you say, and I'm really sorry to hear about your father, but that's a great why. And you don't you know the impact, and you don't want that to happen to people. And I know a few accountants that go into accountancy because their parents had a business and their accountant didn't tell them this and didn't help them with that, and they've gone into it and done that. So yeah, it makes an awful lot of sense. Now the thing is, right at the top of the show, you said something about tax efficient and stuff like that, because my RAC insurance for my van, that came out of the money that I'd earned, that I'd paid tax on, and
Absolutely.
that was like a luxury item. But you're saying that we can do it within the business.
Yeah, so there's probably too many to go through, but I'll focus on two. So the relevant life plan is an allowable expense. It's an equivalent for death in service. So if you go and work for, I don't know, Barclays or some massive corporation, they're going to give you 5, 10 times income, whatever it is, as a death in service plan. And the SME market didn't have that equivalent until a few decades ago. HMRC and the insurers came together and said we need to create something that is tax efficient for the SME market, because they still need something, but they're not necessarily of a size. They might be a one-person band, or they don't have the resources to provide it for their 3 staffs, but they need it themselves. So a relevant life plan it sounds like an oxymoron, but it's equivalent to a death in service, but just on an individual basis. So the easiest way that I can explain it is, as you said, you were paying out of earned income. A lot of people have personal life insurance paid personally. But if you pay in £100 a month, you have to gross probably 150 within the business just to get down to that amount. Whereas the relevant life wrapper allows you to take it out of profit. So you still save on corporation tax, which can be up to 25%. So that might adjust to, a £75, which, 75 versus 150 is where you get the approximate 50% saving. It's not a perfect analogy. I know that probably the accountants will be wincing with my liberal use of rough numbers there, but that's the sort of difference that you can make. So we look at it sometimes, and you've got a couple where one of them is a director of the limited company and the other one's PAYE. And actually you can do, if you're looking at a life insurance policy for their mortgage, you can actually do one each for them for double the amount of cover, and the premium overall is cheaper than the 1 times cover that they were going to take out personally.
Yeah, makes an awful lot of sense. So that's the life cover, because if you're running a business, is it only for limited companies, or will it work for partnerships and sole traders?
The vast majority of what we do is for limited companies. There's a few in there that are solely for them. But a lot of shareholder protection has a partnership equivalent. It's just partnership protection.
Sure.
So there are some that we can do for LLPs, partnerships, charities, others, but our focus is the most common structure is a limited company, and that's the vast majority of our client base, really.
Yeah, sure. So when I did work for Lloyds.
Yeah.
I would have had death in service. I would have also had income protection. So if I couldn't work for a few weeks, they'd still pay me. Is that something that small I can't even say it, SMEs need to sort out as well?
So the death in service relevant life combination, sort of they're equivalents to each other, but on a different scale. The same thing is true for executive income protection and group income protection. We do the group stuff as well, but it's for companies that are either already at a certain size, or that they're going for growth, and adding people quite quickly is the most important part of that. So group is really useful for that. But if you're not growing and there's only a few of you, it's often better to do an individual policy because you've got certainty of how much you're going to pay. So the executive income protection is the equivalent of the group income protection for a big business. Structured the same way, it comes out of corporation profit. So you're saving corporation tax. You can cover up to 80% of salary and dividends and other regular income, employers' national insurance, pension contributions as well. So it's quite a big thing. You know, if you've got a personal plan and you've got the executive version and you're talking to someone in your position, for example, if you're putting in, I don't know, £1,000 a month into your pension and you're off for 5 years sick, that's a £60,000 swing plus growth. That might be 80,000 in your pension pot that wouldn't have been if you'd done it on a personal basis. So it's not just about protecting the individual and making sure they understand why, you know, the here and now. It's also future-proofing that for sort of long-term growth. Because if they aren't going to, you know, if they just do the personal one, they might not hit their retirement goals, and they might have to come back and work longer. They're already not very well, you know, and it's a slippery slope. Maybe they go off ill again and all that sort of stuff.
Wow, I've opened up a right. Whatever the word is now, haven't I? There's loads of things that we should be thinking about. Yeah. And you're saying that pretty much nobody does this.
There's a few. There's some people who do it very well in our industry, but I think, you know, the mortgage brokers and personal insurance brokers are more volume. So they get very busy with dealing with a lot of clients. And when you're looking at a business that's got, you know, you might be doing 20 different types of policies for some group stuff, some shareholder, you know, it's quite difficult, and you have to explain it multiple times. You have to get buy-in with the clients. There's obviously, you know, using the right language to make sure that they can understand it, because you've got some successful business owners who haven't got a clue about this sort of stuff, and you've got some that are really switched on. They know exactly what you're talking about. So you have to make sure it's positioned in the right way that individual can understand why they need to take it out. And then, you know, I think there's a lot of financial advisors who can do it, but the ones that we've met, you know, quite a few of them don't focus on it. You know, they're doing more assets under management, which is totally understandable. But I think there's this gap in this area, and I think with Consumer Duty last year, a lot more people are becoming aware of it. So it is a growing area, but right now, there's not many that focus on it. Not that we've seen anyway.
No, absolutely. It's a real eye opener for me today, and it has got me thinking. What happens if I sort of like want to know more? Where do I go? How do you help me? What do you do? Have you got webinars? Do you do stuff like that? Have you got booklets? What can you do to help? Because, you know, I think I'm like pretty much every other small business. I'm trying to get the job done. I'm in the weeds. I'm not thinking about things like this. Hey, I'm healthy. I'm young.
We don't do loads of booklets and written material because, for the exact reason you just said, business owners are 100 miles an hour and they're looking forward to grow, and they're not thinking, what if I get hit that way or behind or whatever? So actually the most important thing is having a chat like this and understanding first what that individual's risk is. Because if I don't learn anything about you and I just go, we can do this and we can do that, loads of that might be completely irrelevant. And then I've just wasted your time and my time, and we haven't got any buy-in. So the first meeting is all about really understanding, getting under the hood of that business and that individual, understanding their risk preferences, understanding where the biggest risk factors are to their, you know, them not succeeding, basically. And then educating them about how things are structured, and getting other professionals involved as well. You know, with the shareholder agreements, we don't do that in-house. It's a legal document. I'm not a lawyer. I wouldn't want to muck it up, ultimately. So we work with several who, you know, we can pass out and they get involved and so on and so forth. So in terms of finding out more, obviously going to the website, contacting us directly, that's usually the best way, and we can set up a meeting.
Yeah, but like you say, you'll have a proper chat with us, hold our hand and show us what we need to be doing and stuff like that.
And the same with the, you know, professional introducers like accountants, for example, because I think it's a slightly different conversation. You know, if you're an accountant, you know, the 80-20 principle probably applies where you've got some really big, you know, multi-million-pound turnover businesses, and then you've probably got quite a few that are tax returns and, you know, one-man bands, things like that. It's relatively easy to get a new smaller client, but getting a new multi-million-pound business is quite tricky because they've already tied up with someone else in all likelihood. So what I would say to them is, if you work with us, we can actually give you insurance by proxy. And what I mean by that is, if you introduce us to your clients, we can then help protect them, which reduces the risk that they will ever go out of business, which protects your future revenue stream, because they're going to be clients of yours for longer if something bad happens. And we've also got a commission split if people are interested in that as well.
No, perfect. Just sounds like you make it nice and easy. What is a quick tip for someone listening to this today? You know, they're sort of like, they might be listening in the car, they might be walking the dog, and they're just sort of like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. What's your top tip for them now? You've got their ears. They're listening. Come on, tell us.
I would say take the time to look at the risk that you've got, because I think if you're a business owner and all you're doing is focusing on just going forward, that's great for growth, but you could easily be derailed if you don't take this sort of thing seriously. So have a chat. It doesn't have to be me, obviously, but have a chat with your IFA, with someone like me, and really get under the hood of what your risk is, and then just do it before you get ill, right? Because we have these conversations all the time where, you know, oh, she's just been diagnosed, she's got to go for tests, he's got this, and all of a sudden the insurers go, we don't want to know for 6 months. Come back to us once you know what the outcome is, and we'll look at it again. And actually, if you've just done it that bit before, you'll then have the cover, and actually you might have even been able to claim on it.
Yeah, brilliant. Great advice, absolutely. So thank you so much for coming in. That has really opened my eyes, and I'm sure you're going to get an awful lot of questions for this. Now, this is the point of the show where I normally say what I'm doing next week, but this time next week, I'm going to be in Canada, so I don't have a guest next week. But I understand you've got a question for me, Nathaniel.
Yeah, so we do a lot on LinkedIn, you know, with educational stuff, videos, written content and stuff, but we don't get a huge amount of leads through LinkedIn. So just the question is really maybe what we're doing wrong, but how do we increase the volume of leads that we're getting through that platform?
No, that's a great question. So you're posting stuff on LinkedIn as Nathaniel or as your company? Okay.
Yeah.
When you're looking at LinkedIn, Nathaniel, all right, and you see a post comes up, maybe me. Last week I did a photo of me with a bunch of yellow flowers. Okay. Yeah. You probably saw that bunch of yellow flowers and thought, oh, that's funny, and you probably did a comment. And then there was a commercial post from, I don't know, whoever's paying for ads on LinkedIn, and you looked at that. Which one of those two would you have stopped and read?
Yeah, the first, for sure.
Absolutely. And this is the thing. And the other thing, right? People buy from people who they know, like, and trust. So if we're putting content out, we've got to be, your content needs to be educational. Because until you came on here, I didn't have a Scooby that anything that you just told me was even available. And could I put it through my business? So your job as Nathaniel is to educate us. So once a week, do a little bit of content that shows us what we could be doing, some things that we're doing wrong in our business, stuff like that we should be looking at. You've got your story about your father. If you're happy to share that, then that makes this real. And it also shows that your story is absolutely, you know, you don't want this to happen to other people. So that would be something that I would talk about regularly in your content. I wouldn't put out too much content as the company because people aren't reading it, because you've just said you don't like reading it. Okay. And I did a talk at a conference a few weeks ago, and there was probably 100 people in the room. And I said, hands up who likes reading business posts. 2 people put their hand up. Yeah. Everybody else likes reading about other people. So put some personal content out. You know, you might be a footballer. You might have, we've established you don't know anything about football like me, so it's not going to be that. But there might be something that you do in your private life that helps us to resonate with you. You know, oh, I like Nathaniel. You know, when you're on holiday in a foreign town, in a foreign country, yeah, and you decide to go for a little bus trip on the local bus, and you jump on the local bus, and there's all these people coming in speaking the language of the country. Let's just say you're in Italy. And they all come on, and they're all speaking Italian. And then 2 people get on near you, and they start talking with a Brummie accent. All right. And you know they're obviously from the UK, and you're like, oh, are you from the UK? And they go, yeah, we're from Birmingham. Oh, that's amazing. My auntie lives in Birmingham. And before you know it, you're best of mates. because you've got Birmingham what's the word I'm looking for?
In common.
In common. Thank you. And so we resonate with each other. We're English. We resonate with each other. We support Birmingham City. We resonate with each other. Yeah. Which is why I show my guitars on the back wall. Because if you come on and onto a Zoom with me and you're a guitarist, we're automatically friends.
Yeah.
All right. So if you start sharing some of your personal stuff as well in your posts, we start getting a picture of who you are. And then we start listening to you as Nathaniel rather than you as your company. And we start looking at you, So that's what we should be trying to do with our content. And so you make it more familiar. Do you ever go to networking meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah. At a networking meeting, you don't just talk business, do you? You talk about the game last night. You talk about the weather. You talk about the holiday, your dog, your kids, whatever. And that's how we start building up a relationship with people. We start saying, "Oh, you got kid. How old's your kid? Oh, 3. Oh my goodness, so's mine. Oh, that's amazing." And then it's like, "Oh, your kid do this, your kid do that." We never talk about business, but I'm gonna remember you next time I see you because you're the guy with the 3-year-old kid that is already potty trained and mine's not, and what have you. Yeah, that sort of thing. So so try and be a little bit more personal in your post and don't do so much from your company page.
Understood.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. And I will be back in 2 weeks' time where we've got somebody coming on talking about silent disco. So interested to find out about that. But I'm off to Canada. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. And we will see you next time. Thank you. Cheerio.
Thanks. Take care.
You get out what you put in. And we're gonna lose.